How can young people who are going through the complexities of finding what to do in life, and who are they, from your experience, what can they learn?
It's so difficult to answer that question because I had a certain amount of privilege, right? I could quit not having to worry about मेरा खाना कहाँ से आएगा, मेरा पैसे मेरे पास है कि नहीं है. I was married at that time. My wife took the burden or the responsibility of saying, for these months I am earning for the home. Don't worry about it. Whatever savings that I had, you take your time to get okay. If she wouldn't have been there, if she wouldn't have taken those decisions, I don't think I would have been able to have been in a position to even do a move like that. I had my parents who did not require me to put food on the table, right? They were earning enough at that time to not having to worry about कि मेरा बेटा कमा रहा है कि नहीं कमा रहा है. So in that sense, my whole family was very supportive of my sabbatical, my mental health journey. And my family has also grappled with mental health in many different ways. So they were very understanding about it. Not every family is. Sometimes you yourself have so much anger inside of you that why am I going through this? People, and this is one of the unfortunate things about mental health, right? When you have anxiety, it grows sometimes because you question, why do you have anxiety?
Yes.
I have anxiety. Why do I have anxiety? And my anxiety is now doubling because of that. Why am I like this? Why am I an anxious person? Why does my anxiety continue? Why is it happening to me?
Yes.
What did I deserve for it to happen? The same with depression. You get depressed because you're depressed because you're depressed. And it's just like a never-ending vicious loop, right?
Yes.
So it's a very difficult thing at that point of time to manage. And anybody saying stuff like if I am giving an advice and saying, "Haan, ho jayega, theek, it's okay," that's not something. It's not so easy. What I can tell you, what worked for me in particular was, I think so. I took a lot of therapy again, and I feel like again, that's a privileged thing. Many times, not every young person has the privilege of going to therapy or being able to pay for it. But one of the key things that I understood and took away from therapy was that instead of trying to fight my anxiety, I have to befriend it. Can I actually be friends with my anxiety? I know it's a very weird thing to say, but it was the greatest takeaway for me. That if I'm going to fight it, it is going to grow. Because I refuse to believe that I could have anxiety. I refuse to believe that anxiety can happen to a person like me. And that was the biggest problem. That I was just like, but मेरी जिंदगी में कुछ खराब ही नहीं है तो क्यों हो रहा है मेरे साथ ये? But that's not how mental health works. You can be anybody in any position in your life. You can be the wealthiest person in the world. You can have nothing in your life. You can have everything on paper seeming great, and you can still have depression, anxiety, etc. for many reasons. Sometimes it's a chemical reaction in your brain. Sometimes it's a societal thing that hits you. Sometimes it's years and years of battles inside of you that finally break you. Could be anything. And you need to recognize that it's not your fault. That's the most important thing. That it's not happening to you. It's just something that happens, and it happens to many, many, many people. And there does not need to be a reason for it. As long as you understand that and you're calm about the fact that you have issues, it's okay. I think that's the first way of overcoming it, acknowledging it, right? Okay. You acknowledge. After that, my step was that once I realized that it's okay for me to have it, can I actually lean into this? Can I actually start listening to my anxiety in some way? So as an example, I started noticing that I would get anxious about things that I didn't have, my full heart wasn't in, as an example, right? So I was asked to why did I quit my job? Because while I was getting to do some incredible work at Yashraj, there was also a lot of work that I did not want to particularly do. But, and not because that work was not like I thought of myself as कि मैं क्यों करूँ ये काम, but just because some of that work was, I felt like I have limited time in my life. Am I going to spend the next 2 years of my life doing this story that I may not necessarily believe in? The company might believe in that story. They want to tell this story on the big screen. I may not want to tell that story because for me there's a very different personal story that I feel should get out. So I started getting anxious that अच्छा मुझे इस पे काम करना पड़ेगा. अब ये काम तो मुझे नहीं करना. Because every studio has to do things that make them money and then things that they believe, and sometimes they're not the same thing, right? It could actually be, that's how filmmaking works, and that's why even one for you, one for us. It's almost always like that. So I didn't want to do those things that is not for me, and I started listening, and I realized that maybe the answer to this is then why, instead of spending 2 years working on a project that I don't believe in, should I just quit? and they were so kind to me. They said, don't work on this project, do something else, etc., etc. Yasha is such a sweet place for me to have worked, and really, I think, best working experience of my entire life. And yet I realized that I don't want to put the company in a position where, कि आप मुझे कोई script देखो, I cannot say कि I cannot do this. You are paying me a salary. I should be able to do this, but my anxiety tells me that this is not a story that, I want to spend my time and years and efforts to work on. And similarly, if there are people sometimes around, and you would get anxious around certain people and realize that there was toxicity in my life around, and there were people that were making me uncomfortable. So do I really want to spend more time with those people, or should I just very funny, so there was a company, and I will not name the company, that when they heard that I was quitting Yashraj, because I was doing pretty well at that time. I was again heading content and development for Y Films, and I'd made 4 big hit shows at that time. Bang Baja Bara, Lady Zoom, Pappu Papa, Man's World, all of them today are sitting on 50-70 million, and we were, the digital age was just starting. This is before OTT platforms, this is before Amazon, Netflix, YouTube pe hum logon ne, there was TVF and there was Y Films. 2 of us, Filter Copy also started making content just around them. They hadn't broken out at that time. So yeah, I was in the right time at the right place, and I made a bunch of things that worked. So a lot of studios offered me jobs. There was one studio that is owned by, this studio owned by someone like I morally do not like. And they just went after me. You have to meet. You have to just meet. You can say no, but meet. And I was like, I don't want to meet. मैं क्यों मिलूं? मुझे पता है कि that person is not like a good human being. I don't want to put myself in that position. And so I then just literally, I was like, I am going to send you my medical reports. I am anxious. I can't do this. So I used to use my anxiety as an excuse also then. कि ये please देखो मेरे को clinical anxiety है, please मुझे मत बोलो, मुझे नहीं मिलना. Because I realized, and I started listening to my anxiety, and actually started helping me a lot. Because I was like, you are right, anxiety. This is not the right person to be around with. And you're right, maybe this job is not something that is going to give me a lot of fulfillment. Of course, it may not hold true for everything. And when you have incredible amount of anxiety, you're anxious about every single thing. So then sometimes somebody doesn't respond to hi of yours. You've said hi on WhatsApp and nobody's responded to that. For 8 hours, you're just overthinking, does this person hate me? It could be like you're walking, and you've just smiled at someone, and that person smiled in a way you think, did they smile in a way that was condescending? Did they smile in a way that is not warm enough? Or do they think that I am not well? Do you think I have an ego? Did I smile enough? ये हर चीज़ पे आपको एंजाइटी होती है, बट दैट्स द वर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ इट. बट दैट्स व्हाट आई एम सेइंग, एट सम पॉइंट इफ यू स्टार्ट रिकॉग्नाइजिंग दोस साइंस योरसेल्फ, स्टार्ट एक्नॉलेजिंग देम एंड स्टार्ट बिफ्रेंडिंग देम, लर्निंग फ्रॉम इट. क्यों एंजाइटी हो रही है मुझे, क्यों डिप्रेशन हो रहा है मुझे. एंड अगेन दिस इज something that worked for me. There are people that it may not work for, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a mental health practitioner, I'm an advocate. That is something I need to really clarify. But what helped me definitely was just leaning into my mental health and start figuring out what can I learn from, so that I am in a more peaceful place.